Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely, and with me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, the time has arrived. It's the end of the week, and we are now going to determine the fate of many folks. It's thumbs ups and thumbs downs time. So I'll go first. So my big thumbs down rather, for the week is the unraveling of the Biden presidency. So Biden rode to power on the wave of two things that he really had very little to do with. First off, the vaccine, increasing vaccination of the American public, that had been launched by President Trump. Biden enjoyed all the benefits that stemmed from that. It seems like the vaccination is quite popular in the American public. Isn't popular everywhere else, but it is popular in America. He enjoyed the popularity that comes with it. And the gradual opening up of the US economy, also a consequence of the increasing vaccination. So it seemed like America was heading for sterling economic growth rates. But now this week, we have had a lot of very bad things happening to the Biden presidency. We had the very weak economic data, particularly the jobs, the new jobs creation, which was very weak. People were expecting numbers that were going to be 4 or 5 times higher than that. So that would suggest that Biden's policies are not working. And there are also the inflation numbers, which suggest that a serious inflation is heading toward the United States. In fact, it's already there. Commodity prices are rising very rapidly. And that economic packages, which Biden had enjoyed, this great media adulation that he got this economic package through. Clearly, this economic package is not having the effect that it was supposed to do. And in fact, it's making things worse. And as we warned and as others warned, which is that it only makes sense to stimulate an economy that is in the doldrums, that when you are in the middle of a recession, a depression, serious economic downturns, you pump money into the economy in the hope that it's going to stimulate economic activity. When an economy is recovering rapidly, it makes very little sense to dump a lot of money into the economy, and it has all sorts of undesirable effects, which we're now seeing. But so that's on the domestic front. On the foreign policy front, we have a complete vacuum, absence of foreign policy leadership with what's going on in Palestine and Gaza. The Biden administration is having these telephone conversations. So one day they're talking to Netanyahu, another day Biden is talking to Abbas, then Blinken is talking to the head of AP, and they're kind of flapping their hands around, mouthing platitudes about Israel has a right to defend itself. We're against firing rockets into endangering civilians. And Biden makes his ritual comment about, well, we support a 2-state solution, but they have no way forward. They've got no program, no plan of action. And so you'd have to say, well, America, which is the big leader of the world, is hoping that either everyone gets very tired of shooting at one another and it just dies down, or Egypt and Qatar will come forward and put forward some kind of a ceasefire plan, and both sides accept, and then it all just sort of goes away. But other than that, there doesn't seem to be any ideas whatsoever emanating from the Biden administration. So I think that this is a very serious unraveling.
And we can throw on top of that is that all the huffing and puffing and beating of your chest. Blinken drops in on Zelensky and says, "Knock it off."
Right. Yes.
After everything. No, I'm going to completely agree with you, but maybe kind of look at it from another angle here. Is that we suddenly realize we do have the Biden administration. See, now it's real. because of the very reasons that you just gave, because he was sliding on these other issues here. And as far as the economy is concerned, when you're trying to start an engine, don't flood it.
Right.
And that's what you did. You flooded it. I mean, if you just turned the key and let it go. Okay. And this isn't hyperbole, folks. The red states have already been doing that. We already know this. We already know this for months. Unlock it. That doesn't mean we don't need a lot of infrastructure. We do, and it needs to be money needs to be spent in a smart way, not this throwing everything against the wall and see what sticks and what pockets it goes into. Okay. No, you're right. The unraveling of the Biden administration, because now it's standing there right in front of us, naked for the world to see. What is this administration about? Except for making sure that the CIA and the FBI make woke commercials? Huh? Is this what this is about?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Is this about the biggest investigation in the history of the FBI against people that loitered and rioted on the Capitol, which is all to unfold here? Oh, we got a lot ahead of us here. Right. Is this the Biden administration? Okay, mine actually, my first thumbs down is echoes this here. You and I did a separate video a few days ago about why the Republicans are hanging on to the Carter administration, the failure, which I think we debunked it pretty thoroughly. But you know what? Really, what it is, you know why they're doing it? It's navel gazing. It's the Republicans trying to understand their own party, and they're defining themselves through Jimmy Carter. And if you watch, and if you're a viewer of Fox, what percentage of your viewers even remember the Carter administration? You and I do.
Tiny percentage. You know, I mean,
tiny.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be less than, less than the age of, greater than the age of 50 to have any living memory of the Carter administration.
So what it is that the reason why they're creating a caricature of one administration as a reflection of the current administration, but in that very process, they're creating a caricature of their own party, a party that does not exist. Okay, and they go through their whole litany of things. It's really what they're telling us about is they want to go back to Reaganomics, which we already know how that worked out. Okay, no, we don't need that, and that's their default position. So a plague on their house. I mean, all the resources they have, that's the best you can come up with. He's like Jimmy Carter. No, he's not.
No, that's exactly right, and I think you're absolutely right in pointing out that it's all about somehow wallowing in this memory of Reagan, which is why suddenly they're all embracing this hawkish foreign policy, which had gone into abeyance during the Trump years, but now it's back front and center. Oh, America's soft, America's weak, America's got to get tough. We've got to get tough with Putin, we've got to get tough with Iran, tough with China, in this because Ronald Reagan did it. Now, of course, Ronald Reagan didn't do any of those things, but they've kind of got this image in their minds that somehow Ronald Reagan, the cowboy, rode into town, and he shot his gun in the air, and all the bad guys ran away. It's
literally we have. That was the end of the Cold War, a very different environment. And George and I will make a separate video why the Cold War did come to an end. It'll be very different when you get from the mainstream media. But see, what is happening here is that the Republicans are failing to understand the lessons of Reaganomics, and what we live under today is neoliberalism. They're continuing to legitimize and support neoliberalism, which is an untenable thing to do. That means you don't understand what happened in the last 5 years. You have no idea what happened. You see, one of the things that when Obama was elected, the Republican Party had a postmortem. They learned some lessons. I give them some credit there. Okay, the Republicans are not doing it now. Okay, and of course, they may win the House again because of the already apparent failures of the Biden administration. But this is a cul-de-sac, George. Right. We keep going in the same cul-de-sac. Right. See, the perception is the Republicans have the answers. No, the Democrats have the answers. No, neither one of them have the answers with the trajectories that they're on right now.
Oh, I agree. And in fact, when you look back on the times when the Republicans did win the House, what difference did it make? So what happened when Republicans won it back in 2010? You know, what's his name? Boehner, with Boehner was now Speaker of the House. What does it matter? So
What about the 2 years under Trump?
Right. Yeah, that didn't matter either. Again, the Democrats did all of the running during those 2 years. It made absolutely no difference. So yeah, okay, they'll have Kevin McCarthy. So he will win just simply by dint of inertia. You know, because, well, you've got this guy Biden. Everyone's going to be sick to death of the Biden administration, and they'll probably vote for the Republicans. I mean, that it's this cyclical process. Not because Republicans are any good, but that's the only alternative. There's nothing else available. So, yeah, McCarthy will be a House Speaker. Then what? So
neither party is addressing the structural problems of the economy, of the political system, and of society. They refuse to do it, and it is intentional. And this is creating a catastrophe. That means, neither party knows how to put a brake on the disastrous direction we're going into. It's the same direction, George. Maybe it'll be 2 or 3 degrees this way or 2 to 3 degrees that way, but it's going to be that way. Just to cap off on this here, the whole Liz Cheney thing, the darling of CNN and MSNBC. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This cul-de-sac, okay? This worship of empire. Right. Okay, it's really, and that really puts the Republicans, ties their knickers up into a knot, because the libs get to be the global policeman. I thought that was our job here. See, but for the military industrial complex, they don't care if it's Marco Rubio or Liz Cheney. Who effing cares?
Well, that's right. And I think that was in fact my next thumbs down, which was Liz Cheney, because there was actually a very fine piece written by Glenn Greenwald about Liz Cheney.
Yep.
And Liz Cheney's role in spreading the Russia bounty story. So that's something we never had any doubts about, but she was confronted by Fox News's Bret Baier, who asked her about it, and she, as is the Cheney family's wont, lied and denied that she had ever said that the Russians had paid bounties. She said that if the Russians had paid these bounties, then it's a serious matter. And of course, Greenwald, assiduously dug up all of her quotes, in which she did indeed say the Russians did pay these bounties. Russia is a terrible country. We need to do something about Russia and Afghanistan, and said that's the reason why America should not withdraw from Afghanistan, and put that in, put that into the appropriations bill about no.
So let me get this straight. So the U.S. has to stay in Afghanistan because the Russians might ask the Taliban.
That's exactly right. And in the meantime, Cheney has already condemned the Biden military budget as being insufficient. It's only, I think, 1.5% greater than the year before. It has to be 3 to 5%.
3 to 5%.
Yeah, that's she said, for Republicans, that's a red line, she said. So this is the great liberal hero, the sort of the icon of the resistance, to the anti-Trump resistance.
So the 3 to 5% necessary is equivalent to 6 feet social distancing. So right. It's just kind of invented out of nowhere.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
This goes to one of my thumbs down. You and I live outside the United States, but we watch what's going on inside the country I was born, and it's just complete failure of science and the rise of maskism.
Right.
Because you know what it does? It has nothing to do with science, and I don't want to talk about it anymore because it gives me a headache and it's just nonsense, okay? But this whole thing with the mask, the Democrats and liberals want masks? Because they want to be able to identify who they hate.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's.
I mean, it's not a tattoo. It's not a star on your sleeve. It's the mask on your face, so we know who to hate.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I think that's very good.
by being able to know who to hate, it makes you feel really good that you're not them. That's exactly what it is.
No, I agree with you. I think that's a very good point, and I think that that's going to what's going to happen. I mean, because although the CDC has now said, hey, if you've been vaccinated, you can take your mask off. You don't need to wear it, and pretty much, even the New York Times has acknowledged that if you're outside in the fresh air, the virus cannot be transmitted to anyone. Even so, the people who have been vaccinated and they will go on wearing that mask because they will claim we are under threat because of these terrible unvaccinated people. They're the bad
Dirty
guys.
people,
Yeah,
dirty people.
dirty people. So it's like the unvaccinated and the unmasked. They're the one and the same. They're basically Trump supporters. Of course, it is that even that isn't really true, because first of all, Trump has uh, been vaccinated and has advocated people to get vaccinated. And of course, again, also among the African Americans, they are more skeptical about vaccination than pretty much any member of the US public. So the whole idea that the only people who don't want to get vaccinated are Trump supporters, it's belied by all the polling evidence.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you didn't say scientific evidence. That would have probably shut this podcast down. Okay. All right. Maybe a little bit of a quibble here, but I don't know if you saw that there was this kind of news flash that Don Lemon over at CNN was going to retire, and then it wasn't true. And then he's going to be teaming up with Fredo Cuomo Jr. over there, and they're going to have some kind of podcast because CNN's ratings are in the tank, and so they want to go online, which will be just as laughably failure as the cable. But the only reason why I bring this up, because it's kind of an echo of something that we've already said before, is that they like to show that they like to debate, they like to spar. They spar in the same bullpen. Okay. Right. Again, it will show neoliberalism is nuanced. Blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. It's all bad. Okay. It has created disaster after disaster with the professional managerial class. See, this is what they're going to do. They're going to say the professional managerial class have nuanced thinking, which it really doesn't. Okay. So it's going to be a facade, manufacture of consent exercise all over again. So stay tuned, people. If you like the nonsense on CNN and NBC, you're going to get more of it, okay? I doubt people are going to watch it, okay? Though, mark my words, YouTube will push it.
Yes. No, I quite agree with you. I think these people are utter kind of waste of space. And it's an amazing feat that they get these millions and millions dollar contracts, and for what exactly? So my next thumbs down is a little bit connected with that, and that is it goes back to AOC. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene has kind of learned from the master. She's a freshman Republican who has already been voted by the House to be thrown off all her committees. But she's very skilled, just as AOC was, at promoting her brand. But in any case, Marjorie Taylor Greene has challenged AOC to a debate of the Green New Deal. Marjorie Taylor Greene says, I'm a business owner and I think it's terrible. And, she does. Now, AOC doesn't really want to give a debate with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, I guess she feels, hey, why should I give her publicity? She's kind of trying to go with basing herself on me. She's a parasite or whatever. But in any case, there was some kind of a confrontation between the two of them in the House. Again, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, hey, why don't you debate me? And right away, all the clucking hens, including AOC, made out as if poor AOC was under threat. She was really near to getting murdered. She was already
in the Capitol Police.
Yeah. So she was nearly murdered on January the 6th. Now again, Marjorie Taylor Greene almost murdered her the other day, and so whereas one would say we probably would quite like a debate between AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Why not? But now, once again, the House Dems are saying this is so horrific. This threat of violence is so horrific. We need to get the House to censure Marjorie Taylor Greene. So the state of play now is that the House will presumably vote to censure Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Again, it's, either Marjorie Taylor Greene is like the 007 or she's Keystone's cops. I mean, which one is it? Maybe a debate would tell us, okay? Everyone, whatever a member of Congress says on the floor is open. It's fair. You cannot censor that, okay? Unless, obviously, if you're calling for violence, okay, and it's immediate, where the raw material for it to actually happen. But other than that, you can say what you want on the floor of Congress. There have been many times in the history of Congress and some intrepid members where you can actually say classified things on the floor, and it goes into the congressional record. That's how people learn about it. Some people with great courage have done that, like reading the Pentagon Papers, for example, okay? It was a big debate if they could be published and all that, and they say, no, I'm gonna read it, and it'll go into the congressional record, and it's the people's house, and they can read what was said here. So, I mean, here, that is the level of courage that you and I, when we were very small, was exhibited in Congress, and now, oh my God, my feelings are hurt. My goodness. No wonder no one respects Congress.
No, that's right. But it's just very amusing watching AOC, who kind of pulled all sorts of stunts to advance her career. I mean, she was only elected by, I think, 2018. She rapidly rose to media prominence because she pulled all kinds of stunts, similar stunts, like she was looking for Mitch McConnell's office. You remember that whole thing? She was wandering around the Capitol Hill. Where's Mitch McConnell's office? Where's his office? Where's Mitch McConnell? So these are the stunts that she pulled. But now, there's an apprentice rapidly moving in the ranks who's kind of learned how to manipulate the media. And AOC's response is, oh my God, I'm under threat. Somebody might murder me. I mean, it is really, it's just contemptible. If you're in politics, this is what you get. I mean, it's a tough business. You don't like it, go back to being a bartender. She's always talking about her days as being a bartender. Then go back, 10 bar on Union Square and leave us alone. But don't tell us that you're this tough person and then you run home to mommy when another woman is challenging you.
Yeah, and she's stealing my stick.
Yes, that's
okay.
It.
Yeah, really? Okay. And from what this representative from Florida had to say, I don't take her very seriously. I don't take AOC very seriously either. AOC, I give it to her. She's a great public relations person. In all honesty, I respect that. Okay, she's been able to vault herself into the public conversation, but. When she says, Joe Biden exceeded my expectations as a progressive, then you know that she's just part of the machine.
Yeah.
And her antics set her apart, but her policy does not, okay? She is and then Sean Hannity, she's really the Speaker of the House. No, Sean, you have no idea what you're talking about as usual, okay? No, AOC is a public relations event. Full stop. And Nancy and Chuck Schumer, they're perfectly happy with that, okay? Because force the vote. Jimmy Dore had it right all along. You have the power in your hands to make history. No, you're not.
No.
Okay?
I think
what she did was probably went to Nancy's house and said, what do you like, whiskey or scotch? I can make you a cocktail, because we know Nancy likes to drink. So AOC does have a function apparently in the House.
Right. No, I think that's right. Her function is to shepherd the quote progressives unquote into the Democrat camp. So just as think, hey, we don't really like what Biden and Pelosi and Schumer are doing. No. AOC is telling 2 thumbs up. They exceeded my expectations. You need to go vote for them. So that's her function, just to shepherd all of these people into the Democrat establishment camp.
Okay. I think we'll be talking about this more in the future, but my thumbs down here. If Israel is really in danger, whose fault is that? Okay. It is a failed American foreign policy for at least the last half century. So I'm really tired of this, not a very good metaphor, drumbeat that you hear in the media all of the time. It's really shameful what's going on right now. We've talked about it earlier, this equivalence that doesn't exist at all. And the way the media is presenting it is absolutely shameful. And the fact that, Joe Biden finally gets on the phone to Abbas and, he's talking about de-escalation. Well, I think who needs to de-escalate first? And the Biden administration is, even though say they believe, I think they've basically fallen on the position of a two-state solution, which I don't believe in anymore for reasons that we've talked about earlier. It's just again part of this utter failure of this administration foreign policy. It has no direction, no rhyme or reason here, and they're falling back on platitudes. And the leadership I would like to see the United States show in the Middle East is to get out of the Middle East. That would show leadership and it would make the region step up. Okay, so I have another one on this, but I'll leave it at that one.
Well, I think that the problem that there's been, which is that ever since the 1967 war, Israel has very skillfully managed to evade all of the peace plans that have been put forward. And it's done it by a very skillful public relations campaign saying that, the Arabs want to drive us into the sea. The Arabs want to annihilate us. We have nowhere to go if we're driven out. And so it would suggest that Israel is this, this poor, vulnerable state. And everyone just forgets, first of all, it's overwhelming military power in the Middle East. It has nuclear weapons, and it's occupying lands that the United Nations unequivocally deemed to be illegal, and that from which Israel needs to withdraw. And this has gone on, this farce has gone on since 1967, and we've had all of, we had the William Rogers plan. Remember, even in NASA's last days, NASA was offering a very reasonable way forward towards for peace to Israel. Israel spurned that. Sadat, before the Yom Kippur War, also offered a very reasonable way forward. And this has gone on and on year after year. The Saudi peace plan, Oslo Accords, we go through this, and Israel just, basically just continues to ignore it. And America, which at least up until Trump, had adhered to all of the UN Security Council resolutions, particularly on the issue of settlements and occupied lands, has never really done anything about it, has never really attempted to use its great leverage over Israel to force it to come to some kind of a settlement. And so it just goes on.
But the leverage went in reverse. Because you had the lobby invade domestic American politics, so the leverage went in that direction. If you, from a realist point of view, the U.S. has an enormous amount of leverage over Israel, but in reality, the leverage is in reverse. It's Netanyahu can show up they give a speech to Congress when he wants to. Right. See how it reversed, and it's the fault of the American political establishment for allowing that to happen. Okay.
Right. And remember when the Obama administration allowed a vote at the Security Council, which condemned the building of settlements, and basically the United States abstained. Obama did that when he was a lame duck. In other words, it was already after the 2016 election. So that's a profile in courage. First of all, he abstains, but he does it also at a moment in which he's not going to suffer any political price for it. So it was a totally meaningless gesture from the Obama administration, and so that's kind of what happens even when you get a president. And Obama, I think, probably personally was less sympathetic to Israel than most U.S. presidents, but even he never really dared to defy the Israel lobby.
And the money always kept flowing.
Right, that's right.
Okay, now staying on that issue, a really huge thumbs down with the Israeli attack on the offices of AP, Al Jazeera, and Middle East Eye in Gaza. What a shameful thing to do. And I think it's even on par as a war crime. Of course, the apologies, we gave them warnings and all this. No, you're not going to allow them to do their work, okay? And so again, the world, they think, is better off not knowing what's going on. The human catastrophe that at all times, not at this time, in Gaza. And so the Israelis intentionally destroy media outlets so the world can't find out what's going on in the Gaza Strip. It's absolutely shameful. And of course, there was a little bit of pushback from the administration, but nothing meaningful.
Right.
Just another empty gesture. It's just so shameful. I just don't have words for it anymore. It is so categorically wrong.
Okay, I think that's right. But let's not forget that the United States did the same thing during its invasion of Iraq, when it also targeted. This is not criticism of your position. I'm just saying, to add to that,
this is par for the course.
Yeah, media bases in Iraq during the Iraq invasion, and of course, the granddaddy of them all, and let us not forget NATO's bombing of the RTS station in April 1999. And in fact, NATO behaved worse than the Israelis, because NATO did not give immediate warning that it was going to launch this attack. And so NATO did not provide any time at all to evacuate the building, as a result of which I think 16 people were killed in this attack on RTS. And then the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia justified NATO attack by saying, oh, it was being used by the military and whatnot, even though NATO, when it launched that attack, had said, oh, no, this is, we attacked it because it's part of Milosevic's propaganda machine, and therefore it's a legitimate military target. Obviously, lawyers must have told NATO, hey, that's a bloody bad argument, because that means it's a war crime, because whether you like these journalists or you don't like them, that's a civilian target. You targeted civilians, that's a war crime. So they quickly changed their position. Oh yeah, it was part of the Serb military machine. That's why we targeted. Sorry, we forgot that part of it. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you about Israel, but it's in a long tradition of government targeting.
Well, that's what initially got the deep state their anger towards Julian Assange with the collateral damage video. It's right. Not that that U.S. Military personnel committed that atrocity. The crime was the world got to see it. Okay,
I agree.
Same thing. Okay.
That's it. Yeah, no, I agree. My next thumbs down is our friend, the great charlatan, Tony Fauci. He was being, this is a guy who's constantly feted in the media as this avuncular genius whose words we have to hang on, however much he contradicts himself. But now things are getting a little more awkward, because we're getting more and more indications that the origin of this virus was this Wuhan Institute of Virology. Moreover, the Wuhan Institute of Virology had received money from the United States.
There you go.
Exactly, from the National Institutes of Health and in the agency that Fauci was head of. So it was basically, this was experimentation on creating these gain of function viruses. Gain of function means making these viruses really strong and make resistance to any immunity from the human system. So it was always dubious what exactly is the point of this gain of function research. But then again, so why was the United States helping to fund it? But even more seriously, the Obama administration actually stopped this gain of function research. Fauci had kind of started it surreptitiously, but hadn't really notified.
A back door. He had a back door.
But no one in the Trump administration knew that the United States was back funding this gain of function research. So Fauci was raked over the coals by Senator Rand Paul, who's been very good on COVID for quite some time. And we suddenly saw the mask of avuncularity drop from Fauci. And we kind of saw what the sort of mean, rather nasty opportunist that he really is, giving very, very unconvincing denials. And clearly, as Rand Paul said, you're passing words. You were trying to be legalistic in what you're
Yeah,
saying.
because he's corrupt.
Corrupt. I agree. He's corrupt.
Right.
Yep.
See, all of these things, he's like some kind of living saint.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when money comes into it, that's when people are like, ooh, okay. I mean, even his supporters have to wonder what's going on here.
Right.
Not the Dalai Lama, okay?
Right. Right.
He's
No.
actually he's really actually a quite cynical con man.
No, I agree exactly. But he got away with it because the media fell in love with him, and he was, and he.
Because he wasn't Trump. Just look how Trump, not maybe Trump the person, the whole idea of Trump. Look how many brains it's broken,
Right.
George.
Right. Right.
And it continues to.
Right. Right. And so, but what is interesting, and we talked about this before, which is this gain of function research at this Institute of Virology, when by strange coincidence, the virus appears within a few miles of this institute. And remember how the media played this. The media, conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory, any attempt to suggest that the origin of this virus was this lab. And lo and behold, the Chinese are not cooperating with any kind of serious international investigation as to the origin of this virus. So it is kind of strange that somehow the origin of this virus is tied in with Fauci, and then Fauci emerges as the savior, the man who's going to save us from this virus.
I wanted everyone to be very clear here. George and I are not drawing any conclusions here. We're only reacting to a congressional hearing in which Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, cross-examined Dr. Fauci. We are reacting to that testimony. George and I are not making any claims to fact.
Well, no, I think
we're reacting to what is in the public sphere.
But there's more to it than that. I think that there was a long article they published in which the author, I think his name is Nigel Wade, who used to work formerly at the New York Times.
For like 30 years.
Right, exactly. And he basically examined the two theories about the origin of the virus. The theory that its origin was the wet market, which is what everyone was accepted implicitly at the beginning, and then the other one, that this origin is the lab. And Wade, this is not a Trumpian by any means. He pretty much says, it's more than likely that the origin is an escape from the Wuhan lab.
If you don't want to read the article, Jesse Waters had this author on his program on the weekend. It's a rather lengthy interview. I'm not the biggest fan of Jesse Waters on Fox, but it was a good interview, and he allowed the author of this article to really expand upon his thesis as George presented it to us here now. So I take a look at the article, take a look at Jesse Waters' interview, and it's basically confirming a contrarian interpretation of what we've been fed for the last year or so, which is quite nauseating and apparently not true. All right, we did a separate video a few days ago on a group of retired and active military figures in France, essentially warning of an impending civil war, which basically has its antecedents in a cultural breakdown in France. They came out with a second letter, which I think is, my interpretation of this is that, no, the first letter was important. This one's even more important because we're serious, okay? As a result here, some of this, have some French polling data here. 60% of French police and military say they will support Le Pen in the upcoming presidential election. So these are the guardians of the state and public order, and that is a landslide. 60% is a landslide by any definition. This is an important message that's being sent out here. And we have to understand, if you're listening to George and I in America, we have the First Amendment. In France, they don't, okay? There is no such thing as a First Amendment. And criticism of things can fall into hate speech very easily, very quickly, okay? And so this is a clarion call. And I really, you don't have to be an expert on French politics to understand what this all means.
Well, I think that's right. Because what's really going on now in France is that the French political establishment is absolutely petrified. they had been convinced for years that they'll be able to keep Le Pen out of power. So time and again, they keep inventing some new political figure, whether it's Sarkozy or Hollande or Macron, somebody or other. No one knows anything about. They've thrust him in there, and that's the person to keep Le Pen out. It's really failing. I mean, because all the polls are indicating that Le Pen has a very good shot at winning next year. And they are in absolute panic. I mean, yeah, obviously they're lashing out at this military, but they are in an absolute panic because they don't know what to do. Macron is very unpopular, and they don't really think Macron can pull this off. And therefore, I think they may well be already looking around for some new Macron, a Macron 2.0, whom they can thrust in, just like Macron, good looking and so on, but maybe a little bit tougher, in tackling some of Le Pen's issues. But they are in absolute panic that the Le Pens will finally prevail in France. So it's a very, very interesting, volatile situation.
Well, and it's such a litmus test for all of the European Union. I mean, Brexit is one thing, and there's so many different reasons for Brexit. But if you look at France, one of the anchors of the EU, and to see such a dramatic political change in the cards here, that's a real wake-up call of what's going on, because what's going on in France is happening all across the continent. And so a lot of people are going to be watching this very carefully. The interesting thing is if Le Pen could form a government, she could become inaugurated as president, and you have the Green Party in charge in Germany.
Yeah,
whoa. What a hash that will be.
That would be very, very interesting, because of course, particularly on foreign policy, because Le Pen has been absolutely unapologetic in her view that France and Russia are traditional allies, and therefore, she would work towards restoring a Franco-Russian alliance in the kind of the Gaullist tradition. The German Greens are his
fanatics
of the Russian. They've drifted a long way from the days of the nuclear movement, the Petra Kelly and all of those people from the early 80s. So it's a very strange kind of a group now, the Greens. But yeah, they could certainly form the next government.
And it's really weird. The closer you look at Germany's Green Party, they're just the green version of neoliberalism. It's really bizarre. I mean, again, I always kind of feel embarrassed on our podcast because we date ourselves, because I remember the original Green Party. Okay, right. I mean, it's unrecognizable today.
No, that's right. Yeah. No, the key figure there was Joschka Fischer, who kind of
quite talented person.
Talented person, but a terrible person. But he was instrumental when he joined that German government, which came to power in 1998, to orient Germany into NATO and the bombing of Yugoslavia. He was a much more of a hawk on Yugoslavia than was Gerhard Schroeder, who was the chancellor. So, but that was a key role that Joschka Fischer.
But I do remember some of his op-eds, and he was willing to think out of the box on a lot of things, which was very unusual for people in his political circle here. I mean, you end up having these characters that, and it's really kind of pathetic, is that they have to show their strength. They have to show, that they're a hawk, okay? And it almost always does go in the wrong direction here. But I mean, if you look at his origins and how he transformed, it shows, neoliberalism is such a powerful, addictive force.
But we're kind of straying a bit now. But Joschka Fischer was always a very, if you remember how he started, he was extremist and violent. Remember there's a photograph of him kicking a police officer. Now, anyone who engaged in violence, automatically you have to be suspicious. Is this person for real, or is he essentially a police agent, an agent provocateur? And the very fact that there was this photograph of Fischer kicking a police officer, you kind of always suspect that this whole thing was just a setup precisely by the police to discredit the left. In other words, anytime in any revolutionary organization, you read Dostoevsky, read Conrad or whatever, the person who's shouting the loudest, the person who's demanding the most violence, that's the police informer. So
yeah,
that's my view of Fisher.
Okay, we're going down a rabbit hole here, but I'm going to agree with you because I find it very interesting, and it happens all the time. Someone that has been radical and somehow can take on and kind of change the center. We get this all the time, this pattern all of the time. The number of times they're a police informant, probably very high. Okay.
Right. No, that's
I'm out of thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay.
What do I have? Yes, I have a thumbs down for our friend Zelensky. Zelensky. So now apparently they're going ahead charging Medvedchuk, who's a leader of the opposition in Ukraine, with treason, no less. So they're bringing treason charges against Medvedchuk. And but the interior minister in Ukraine has already suggested that once Medvedchuk is convicted, they're going to use him to exchange prisoners who are imprisoned in Russia, Ukrainians who are imprisoned in Russia. So this would suggest that this is a state totally lawless and is just using the governmental powers as a means of extortion. Bring criminal charges against someone with no other reason other than to extort another country to release prisoners. Boy, is this illegality. I don't hear anything much from the EU and Values, Mr. Values Stoltenberg, NATO Secretary General. I'd love to know how these comport to NATO's values.
It really reminds me, and it really plays into different perceptions of politics and different political cultures. But after the forced regime change in February of 2014, one of the first things the coup regime did was get rid of the Communist Party, because that was one of the parties that had supported Yanukovych. Now, for all our viewers here, I'm not a communist. George is not a communist. If there is a communist country, party in Russia, if I were a Russian citizen, I wouldn't vote for it. It doesn't mean I don't think it shouldn't be allowed to exist, okay? And so what they did was this was primarily pitched to the Americans, is that Poroshenko, he got rid of the communists, like, oh, good, it's like, this is like 1985, okay? No, what they did is they completely to disenfranchise a whole group of people. And the same thing with the Party of Regions, okay? Just get rid of it, okay? And that their property was stolen, there was arson attacks, their politicians were attacked in their home, there were casualties, it was lawlessness, okay? All in the name of democracy, okay? And then we had during a few weeks ago, what were deemed to be by official Kiev as pro-Russian media outlets. They had to be taken off, their licenses pulled. Okay, no freedom.
Media outlets owned by Medvedchuk, so it's still going on.
Full circle there. Okay, so this is absolutely abominable. And Blinken was there in the last week. Okay, yeah. And this is his values.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but what it shows, George, is that Ukraine remains a failing state, because you can't confront opposition with arguments. What you do is you have fiats. You don't exist, and we're going to deny you of your citizenship, call you charge you with sedition, and then basically strip you of your citizenship and trade you. Okay.
No, exactly right. That the fact that they are so openly cynical in talking about, once we've convicted him of treason, we'll use him in order to exchange him for prisoners in Russia. I mean, that is extortion. I mean, in other words, you're using the powers of government to extort, to extort favors from another government. It's an absolute outrage. I mean, it's the worst kind of, scandalous behavior on any government's part.
Particularly since this politician was involved, and I think he was a good faith actor And when the Kiev government started attacking the Donbass, he was there to be an intermediary, saying, we got to de-escalate this here. This is going to turn into a disaster, not just for the people of Donbass, but for all of Ukraine. From what I know, he was a good faith actor, and because of his good faith, he's turned into a traitor.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Yeah. Do I have anything? Yeah, I have finally a thumbs up. Now we've often leave it to the end. We've often spoken harshly about the Republicans, but I think some congressional Republicans behaved quite well this week. They've been speaking out about the treatment of the people involved in the events of January the 6th, and the fact that they've been now in prison without bail for more than 4 months, that they are being held in solitary confinement, and some of them have claimed to be beaten and tortured. There's no indication that trials are coming anytime soon. And, it's been shocking that that Republicans have been saying so little all this time, but finally a few Republicans are now speaking out. I mean, there was Representative Louis Gohmert of Texas who spoke about this empty House floor. But it is an absolute scandal. And again, note the ACLU nowhere as to why people who the charges against them that he's that essentially loitering, trespassing. Why are they being held without bail month after month? Why are they being held in solitary confinement, something that is deemed to be torture? And then the judges before whom these defendants come asking to be released on bail, these judges sound like prosecutors. I mean, they simply are accepting all the prosecutors' claims, or in other words, they're already holding the trials during these bail hearings, and saying that, well, they should be held. Continue to be held in detention because they have the wrong views, because they still believe that the election was stolen. So for that alone, they deserve to be still in prison awaiting trial. Well, supposedly, the United States doesn't imprison people for wrong thing. Whether they're right or whether they're wrong, we don't imprison people for having the wrong views. But that's what seems to be happening in DC. So kudos for the few Republicans who have raised this issue.
Yeah, but I keep reminding us about what's on the horizon. I mean, George, what's the venue for the trials? Where?
DC.
DC,
and yeah, absolutely. And the jury's there, boy. I mean, those are Democrat juries. They're going to be very, very unsympathetic, and the judges in DC are all extremely unsympathetic.
Ask Roger Stone.
Yeah.
Ask
Michael Flynn.
Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, and Blinken continues his values.
That's it.
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
Right. And let's bring up the subject of Navalny again. So let's just talk some more about Navalny. Yeah, it's a wonderful distraction. So we don't have to discuss any of our own failings, all the ways in which we abuse the justice system. We can just focus happily on Russia and Navalny. It's a very nice little racket.
Yeah, because the people that were loitering threatened the Republic.
That's it.
And they believe that. They believe that. The looters of last summer, they were protecting the public. Here we go, George Orwell. Welcome to 2021.
That's it. That's exactly right. That's exactly. All right. I think I'm out.
I'm out too.
Okay. All right. So that was the thumbs ups and thumbs downs for this week. We will be back next week, in which once again the fate of the world will be decided. We are now on the Gaggle. Where we found on the Gaggle, Peter?
With the Gaggle, we're on Locals. You can find us at thegaggle.locals.com.
That's it. thegaggle.locals.com. And please try to support us to whatever extent.
We have premium content.
We have premium content, exactly. So we're also on Rumble. Look us up on Rumble. And if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.